Welcome to Stories in Time. My name is Eloise Shuttler. I'm a storyteller. The past few days, I've been going through old stories. I'm cleaning my blog. I've been writing a blog since 2005. And I've forgotten so many of the things that I put on there. Some of them are stories that I found or somebody told me. Well, yesterday I picked up one from December 2009. And it had such a wonderful story on it that I'm going to tell it to you. In those days, my husband was going regularly to get chemo for his cancer. And the staff at the chemo office where they delivered the medication was just filled with wonderful, good people who like to talk. And I love to be with people who like to talk. We would go there. It would be a couple of hours before Jim would be ready to leave, and I would stay. He had time to read things that he was trying to follow from his business. He was a doctor, and he would keep up with them, or he would read something that he needed. I took my computer and I took other things. But you know something? Mostly we talked with the nurses and the other patients. In the story that I read, and I remember it very well, there was a new nurse. She hadn't been on the system very long, and so we were just meeting her, and she was setting Jim up in a chair so that he could get his IV in and get ready, and they could set up the medication, etc. And through a little conversation, you know how it happened, where were you? You're a psychiatrist. Oh, my father was a psychiatrist. And they discovered that her father was from Europe, he was a psychiatrist, and he had done some training or had a connection with Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn, New York, which is where later than he, Jim had been an intern there. It was just sort of a small indication of small world. Doesn't that happen to you? And I perked up and became much more interested in what they were talking about. And she said that she was from Romania and that they were there prior to the war starting, the World War II. And that, you know, they were threatening Jews. They were scared. They didn't know when the Germans would change, what would happen. And her parents decided that they really were going to have to make a plan for themselves and for their children. One night, I heard my mother and father in the living room talking. I was in my bedroom, and they were talking, and they were discussing something that had happened politically. I didn't know what it was. I was too young, and I didn't understand it anyway. But the next night, I heard some noise in the garden. And I looked out the window. I was on the second floor, the upstairs bedroom floor. And I looked out the window, and in the garden, there was my mother and father. They had a box with them, quite a large box. It's like a trunk with them. And they opened it up and spread some things around, and then they dug a very deep hole to put it in. And I watched. Nobody told me what was going on. I just kept watching. The next day, I asked my mother, I saw you and Father out in the garden last night digging a hole and putting in a treasure, it looked like. Well, it's not a treasure. Don't worry about it. It's just something we were putting in the garden. And that was all she ever said. Well, we did leave Romania. My mother and father evidently had enough money to do that. And so we came to the United States. And my father became a psychiatrist, just like you, Dr. Shuttler. And so they talked about that for a little minute and whatever. And she said, you know, when I was 24, now I'm not 24 now. You can tell that, can't you? When I was 24, I had a dream. I had a dream one night about being back in Romania, back in our house in Romania. And I dreamed that I saw my mother and father digging up in the garden, making a hole and pulling on something, and they pulled out of the hole a chest. And it was the chest that I remembered seeing them bury. And they took it and they opened it. It's good. It's good. Yes, it's good. And then I woke up. And I asked my mother, I had a dream. Oh, what kind of a dream could you have here? I dreamed about being back in our house in Romania. Oh, sweetheart, we haven't been there in such a long time. And it's not our house anymore. We have this lovely, wonderful house. It's not that, Mama. I remember asking you and Father what you were burying in the garden. Do you remember that? Oh, yes, I do. I do remember us doing that. We just buried it. It was just golden guns. Golden guns? Oh, that was just a joke that your dad played on me. He said, let's just bury this box of golden jugs and guns. And we did. Well, what did you dig up? If you went back, like in my dream, did you dig it up? What happened? Yes, we did dig it up. And you're old enough, and I probably should tell you the truth. We did dig it up. It was heavy, and we pulled it up, and we opened it. And it was gold, it certainly was. There was gold in that treasure trove. It's the money that we paid the man who made our passports so that we could leave Romania. He saved our lives. Things had changed in the country. Jews were not safe. We knew that we had to leave and leave soon. So your father said, it's time for us to bring up the gold and the guns. I never saw any guns in that little box, but I saw a lot of gold, and it saved our lives. Sometimes you can think about that if you want to. Well, I didn't think about it much, really. I was thinking about it not long ago. That's why I guess I'm telling you that story. It sounds almost like a folk tale, doesn't it? Like my mother and father were living a folk tale in order to save our lives, and that they did. I wanted to ask her some more questions right away. Jim wasn't encouraging me to go ahead and ask questions. You know, he's a psychiatrist, and maybe he didn't want me dipping into her dream. I don't know. But I never forgot it, and just about then, I thought she was getting ready to tell us something else. But she looked at her watch, and she said, oh my goodness, I need to go and take care. And she named one of the patients there, and she said, but I'll see you before you leave. So we never did get to hear the end of that story. But obviously, from what I found earlier this week on the computer from 2009, typed in the story from the chemo lab, I had taken down, and it had really impressed me. I'm only telling you this because I think it's a charming story, that there's stories all around us. If people start to tell, all we have to do is listen, and maybe we'll be encouraged to say our own stories. I don't know. She was happy. She was glad to be in the United States. The golden guns helped her out. I don't think there were any guns involved, but she said that's what he always said. It was a box of golden guns. I like to think of my father that way. and then she charted off to take care of 2 other patients. In case you haven't realized that, that's how we storytellers find our stories. We find them that way. We read and we listen, and that's how we get the stories that we want to bring to you. Thank you for listening. I hope you'll come back.